Have you ever discovered a detail at a theme park and thought, there's gotta be a story behind that? Well, you've come to the right place. We're Amanda, Kevin, and Kim, the team behind We're in the Park, and we've spent years exploring theme parks and creating seek and find games that uncover the details that most people miss. And now we're diving into the history, stories, and secrets behind those magical details. So grab your curiosity, and maybe even a churro, and let's explore the parks together, one detail at a time.
Hello and welcome to the We're in the Park podcast. This is Kevin, and on this episode, I will be going over the history of the theme park brand currently known as United Parks and Resorts. Now, for anyone who hasn't been following the weird world of theme parks, we have put together a timeline to make some sense out of how we got to the current United Parks and Resorts Incorporated, which, if you don't know, today, I'm recording this in 2025, includes 2 Busch Gardens theme parks, 2 Sesame Place water/theme parks, and 4 SeaWorlds, which includes the 3 marine parks in the US and 1 mostly indoor park in Abu Dhabi. They also have 4 water parks and the Discovery Cove Experience Park in Orlando. Before I start, I want to point out that we at We're in the Park know SeaWorld can be considered controversial. We also know that just putting this episode out will result in 2 distinct groups finding our podcast. Those who love SeaWorld, like us, and those who very much do not love SeaWorld. Now, whether you love SeaWorld or not, we're happy that you're here, and we hope you learned something that you didn't already know. We do want to go on the record saying that we support SeaWorld's 2016 decision to conclude their orca breeding program, as well as their commitment to continue to care for the orcas that they have. Also, beyond the orcas, we believe the company when they mention the number of animals they have helped to rescue. We also really do think the current management includes people who truly care about animals, and that the company is a net good for conservation, care, and rehabilitation for animals that would not survive without SeaWorld's help. Now, to that timeline of how SeaWorld Entertainment Incorporated became United Parks and Resorts. Technically, I could start in 1852 when Anheuser-Busch was founded, but instead, we'll skip ahead and start the timeline in 1958 when 2 guys, one named George Millay and the other David Talichet, opened a Hawaiian-themed restaurant in Long Beach, California, named The Reef. Talichet had been a hotel manager for Hilton, which Millay met when he cold called him back when Millay was working as a stockbroker. I should point out that many of the fun facts I'm going to be referencing in this timeline are from George Millay's biography, The Wavemaker, written by Tim O'Brien in 2005. Continuing on, in 1959, the year after the Reef restaurant opened, Anheuser-Busch, yes, I am talking about the beer company, opened what would eventually become their first Busch Gardens theme park in Tampa Bay, Florida. This was essentially just a small zoo with some pretty gardens that they put in next to their new brewery. For anyone fact-checking us, they had used the name Busch Gardens for a garden area near Adolphus Busch's home in Pasadena, California from 1906 to 1937, but we're talking about theme parks here, so we're leaving that off the timeline. Around 4 years later, in 1963, George Millay tried to figure out how to add an underwater bar to that restaurant in Long Beach. Because of murky water, it turned out the idea wouldn't be worth building, but the people he met trying to figure out that project are who inspired him to create a marine park in Mission Bay, San Diego. He eventually talked a few friends into investing into his crazy idea to build an aquarium, lagoon, and dolphin show experience, which George thought of as kind of an underwater zoo. In 1964, it opened as the world's first SeaWorld park. In 1966, Busch opened a second Busch Gardens, this time with a monorail and boat rides in Van Nuys, California. In 1967, SeaWorld added its first ride, the Bayside Sky Ride, which was manufactured by the Swiss company Von Roll. At the time, it was added as transportation from the park to the Atlantis restaurant. The restaurant closed in 1988 and is currently home to the Hub SeaWorld Research Institute. The ride is still open at SeaWorld, but does not stop at the station, instead returning guests back to the park where their journey started. In 1968, SeaWorld Incorporated went from being a privately held company to a public company. With the money from their stock sales, SeaWorld opened another park in Aurora, Ohio in 1970. Busch Gardens, meanwhile, opened another location in Houston, Texas in 1971. Also in 1971, and a surprise to me while researching this, SeaWorld opened Magic Mountain in Valencia, California. A few years earlier, in 1968, After learning about how much money Disneyland and Cedar Point were making with their ride parks, SeaWorld's George Millay decided that he wanted to create a park without animals as well. SeaWorld then partnered with the Newhall Land and Farming Company to open that Valencia, California theme park. The first year of that park did not go well, and SeaWorld ended up selling their shares back to Newhall. It wasn't until 1979 that Six Flags purchased the park, but that's a whole other timeline for us to cover in a future episode. Back to what we were talking about. In 1973, SeaWorld opened in Orlando, Florida. That same year, Busch Gardens Houston closed, just 2 years after it had opened. In 1974, the SeaWorld board decided to give George Millay a quote, promotion into a chairman role, which made it where he could no longer manage the company. The board referred to the failure of Magic Mountain and SeaWorld Orlando going over budget as their reasoning for doing so. He resigned soon after. By 1975, the beer company had started adding attractions to their zoo and had opened the most recent of their parks in Williamsburg, Virginia, which, along with the original Tampa Bay location, are the only two that are still operating today. The following year, 1976, MCA Universal attempted a hostile takeover of SeaWorld, but they avoided that by instead selling to Harcourt Brace Jovanovich, a publishing company from New York that was trying to diversify their holdings. In 1979, Busch Gardens closed their California park, but in 1980, after working with the Sesame Workshop, they opened the original Sesame Place theme park located near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Harcourt Brace Jovanovich took on a bunch of debt in 1987 to fend off their own hostile takeover bid from Robert Maxwell's British Printing and Communication Corporation, but they still finished and opened a new SeaWorld in San Antonio, Texas in 1988. In 1989, Busch Entertainment, 30 years after opening the first Busch Gardens park, acquired SeaWorld Inc. by purchasing the Harcourt Brace Jovanovich Park Group, after Harcourt decided to focus on their core publishing and insurance businesses instead of theme parks. This deal also included 2 other destinations. Cypress Gardens, which they ran until 1995, but is now owned by Merlin Entertainment and is where you will find Legoland, Florida today. And the other was an amusement park named Boardwalk and Baseball, which had been built around a park previously named Circus World, but it would be closed within 2 months of being purchased. In 1992, SeaWorld Orlando opened its first ride, Mission Bermuda Triangle. A version of the attraction was also added to SeaWorld San Diego in 1994. Both of those were replaced with Wild Arctic motion simulators in 1995 and 1997, respectively. It wasn't until 1997 that a roller coaster was added to a SeaWorld park, when the Great White opened at SeaWorld San Antonio. The following year, Journey to Atlantis opened in SeaWorld Orlando in 1998. In the year 2000, SeaWorld Orlando opened Discovery Cove, an all-inclusive resort with animal interaction experiences. SeaWorld Ohio was sold to Six Flags in 2001, who later sold it to Cedar Fair in 2004, but it was eventually closed down for good in 2016. It was in 2004 that the first roller coaster at SeaWorld San Diego opened, their own unique version of Journey to Atlantis. In 2009, the Belgian brewer InBev purchased Anheuser-Busch and then sold the theme park properties to an investment group company named the Blackstone Group. SeaWorld Entertainment went public on the stock exchange in April of 2013. 7 months later, the film Blackfish was released, causing backlash against SeaWorld for their treatment of orcas and their trainers. That year, Blackstone began selling off their shares, and by the end of 2016, they only owned around 21% of the company. In 2017, Blackstone sold their stake in the parks to, forgive my pronunciation on this if I'm way off, Zhongyang Joy Group of China, a company that had hoped to have SeaWorld advise them on concepts and designs for parks in China. But in 2019, they had to surrender those shares after defaulting on loans. In 2022, a new theme park was added to the roster named Sesame Place San Diego, which had actually started out as a water park in Chula Vista in 1997 named Whitewater Canyon, but it went bankrupt the following year and was sold to Cedar Fair at the end of 1999. They reopened it as a Knott's Soak City, USA water park for the 2000 season. At the end of 2012, the water park was sold to SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, and they opened it as Aquatica San Diego in 2013, which followed the branding of Aquatica water parks that had opened in Orlando and San Antonio in 2018 and 2012, respectively. In 2017, Sesame Workshop announced that a new Sesame Place park would open by mid-2021. And in 2019, it was revealed that Aquatica San Diego was going to be rebranded as Sesame Place. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, plans were delayed, and the park wasn't ready until 2022. And finally, SeaWorld Abu Dhabi opened in 2023, and like I had said earlier, it's mostly indoors, except for their version of a manta roller coaster that goes outside of the building. We should point out that this park is not owned or operated by United Parks. It is located on Yas Island and is licensed by the Morale Group, similar to how the announced Disney park is going to be when it opens there in the future. And that's how we got all of the parks under one company. Like I said at the beginning, in 2024, SeaWorld Entertainment changed their name to United Parks, likely to prevent confusion with the Busch Gardens and Sesame Place parks being considered SeaWorld parks, but also likely to distance those parks from the SeaWorld name, which we pointed out earlier is considered controversial to some people. The current CEO of United Parks is a certified public accountant, or CPA, named Mark G. Swanson. He has held that position since May 2021. He has worked in many positions within the company since 2004, but mostly in finance-related roles. And well, that brings us to today. Like I started off with, there are now 2 Busch Gardens theme parks, 2 Sesame Place water/theme park hybrids, and 4 SeaWorlds. And that's where the timeline currently ends. I know I didn't cover every ride and attraction added to the parks. Some have been successful and others not as much, but the parks are continuing to add wildlife exhibits and modern attractions every year. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 did cause some disruptions within the parks, and several indoor exhibits have still not reopened to the public, but we look forward to what the company has in store for us guests in the future. So, how many of these parks have you been to? Do you have any memories and or photos of the parks from over the years? Please join us in our private Facebook group, Where in the Park Explorers, to share your experiences. If you had a good time today, we invite you to leave us a 5-star review and to like and follow us on whatever platforms you use. And until next time, we'll see you somewhere in the parks.
Thanks for exploring with us today. If you're ready to take your park experience to the next level, check out Where in the Park Games. They're self-paced, seek-and-find adventures designed for you to experience the park in a whole new way. Whether you're visiting for a birthday, a family gathering, date night, or even a solo trip, you'll be searching up high and down low for the details found in the park's theming. Get ready to discover a deeper appreciation for your favorite theme park with a Where in the Park game and take 10% off your next adventure by using code PODCAST10. Which park will you explore next? Until then, we'll see you somewhere in the park.